Good morning, everybody. Give me just 1 second. I have to adjust. Sorry, I should have done that before I started the camera. This morning's little video is going to be a question and answer. I did pose, not pose, posted my Yellowstone Adventures Part 1, Part 2, and after Part 1, I actually got 4 questions from Nellie that I did not answer because what I had done was I had recorded both parts and put them on 2 different days, and it wasn't until this morning I looked at the comments. Well, actually, I looked at comments last night and wrote down the questions, and then again I looked this morning to see if there was more additional questions. So I'm going to answer those questions here and now. The first question from Nellie is, what's my favorite memory of Yellowstone? That's going to be a hard one, to be honest with you, because I worked 2 different parts of Yellowstone. One, the first time I went to Yellowstone was the northern part of Yellowstone, which was the Mammoth Hot Springs. And my favorite part of that particular adventure, or that particular time, I'm gonna have to say literally my experience with the paranormal aspect of the Mammoth Hot Spring Hotel, because it solidified and verified my belief that there are supernatural, paranormal aspects of life that we don't always get to experience because we're too busy with our hustle and bustle of the day. But then my other favorite part of Yellowstone, my other favorite memory of Yellowstone would be when we were at, or when we, there was no we there, Jim. When I was at Old Faithful and having that bison right outside my window. That would be my ultimate favorite one, is having this big buffalo, this big old bison outside my window, this wild animal that could easily stomp me down into a pile of goo outside my dormitory window. I would have to say, though, if I had ever gotten the chance to go and either catch a glimpse or be within 15 feet, maybe 10 feet away from an actual wild Yellowstone wolf, that would have been my ultimate memory if that had ever happened. But it didn't. I never got to see them. I only got to hear them and see the evidence of their passing by with footprints in the mud. The second question she asked me was pictures of Yellowstone. Unfortunately, I could not find those pictures. I'm afraid that either those pictures are buried somewhere in one of the memory boxes in my house. I have 2 memory boxes that are kind of buried under a bunch of other stuff. But I'm also afraid that some of those pictures might have gotten lost in Hurricane Sandy, because we did lose a lot of photos in Sandy. If I find those, because I'm going to try to look for those soon, if I do find those and remember to place them on the back quarter or the back end of one of my videos, I will try to do that. But right now I don't know where they are, so I'm sorry about that. Souvenirs. I'm actually using one this morning. It is a thermal mug with cap from Yellowstone. I could not find my water bottle or sports bottle, as some people call them. One of the other souvenirs I have, which I cannot bring in here because it's not a rug, it's a blanket, and it's kind of hanging up on a blanket display unit in the craft room. What other souvenirs did I bring that I can't remember? I know I had this mug that I bought, the employee mug or water bottle that I don't know if it got damaged, worn, and torn. As you can tell by looking at this, I'll bring it closer to camera. You can tell it's fading and getting all scratched up from the years of usage. Years. How many years would 10, maybe 15 years of having this one from Yellowstone. That was the last time I was in Yellowstone, was it 2010? It had to be before, it had to be around 2010, 2012. It was between, the last time I was up there to work was in between my father-in-law's passing and Hurricane Sandy. That's all I can remember. But yeah, I had a few souvenirs. Most of them were like either mugs or a blanket or little trinkets that have basically either disappeared or got broken or one thing or another. It happens. Most of the souvenirs I get, I'm the type of guy that will get a souvenir that is not just for decor, it's for practical use, like my mug and my blanket. But if you haven't guessed, the blanket has wolves on it. It has a pair of wolves on it, I do believe. I'd have to go in the other room to look. The fourth question she asked was, have I checked about going back? All right, for any of you who are also a member of my wife's YouTube channel, she doesn't know this, but yes, I have looked multiple times about going back. My hope and dream was to basically find a pair of jobs or find both of us jobs up there in Yellowstone to go do, but with her diminished stamina, which means she cannot be on her feet for long periods of time, the only job that I can think of that she'd be able to do in Yellowstone would be like working on the computer as a reservationist, somebody who double checks reservations on a computer in a back room or in a call center to make sure that people know about their reservations. Something like that. For me, if I were to go back, it would be in one of the food service areas, because that's what I like doing. I like food service. Of course, my ultimate goal would be to both of us be able to go back as tourists, not employees. I keep on telling her, you know, if we don't have even if we do have an RV, we might have to make reservations in advance, because last time I was up there, they were telling us that in order for you to stay in the park, let alone some of the areas outside of the park, you literally have to make your reservation 2 years in advance. That was back in, was that my first time I heard that, or was that my second time I heard that? I don't remember if it was the first or the second time. But there's all kinds of places, you know, you've got inside the park. Inside the park, to stay as a guest or a visitor, is you've got the campgrounds, and there's campgrounds all over the park. You've got the various hotels or frontier caverns. Let's start if there is a break in this video. I had an alarm set for 11 o'clock. I forgot to turn it off. So, anyhow, what was that? Oh, yes. What I know about places to stay in the park, besides the various campgrounds, designated campgrounds, and the factor that you have to follow certain rules and regulations and do certain things for safety purposes, because even the campground by Mammoth Hot Springs got raided by a bear. It wasn't a big old grizz, but it was a bear. I think it was one of our smaller varieties of brown bear. Um, Somebody basically did not properly contain their food items, and 4 o'clock, was it 4? No, 6 o'clock in the morning. A bear decided to go wandering through the campgrounds and found somebody's food supplies left in a non-secured container. And the campgrounds usually either provide you with what they call a bear container. Basically, it's a general located locker, food locker, that is sealed. It has seals and whatnot, and it's supposed to help keep the bears away from your food. The other thing they tell you to do is get a rope, throw the rope over a sturdy tree limb on a nice big heavy duty tree. Tie your food stuff, your Coleman cooler or whatever on this rope or onto a netting or somehow secure it to the rope and pull the rope up so it's a good 15 feet above the ground, because if the bears can get to it, they will tear open a Coleman like it was a paper bag. I've seen it. Yeah. Their bite force alone will bite through the Coleman easily. And bears during the springtime are so hungry they'll eat the Coleman. It's wild what they'll do. But you've got there's an area in I can't remember the area is called the North Valley, and that's where they released the wolves in '95. But the North Valley has a campground and a small hotel type building, so you can stay inside the building or you can brave the campgrounds. I'll tell you what though, what I found out in 2000 when I went back up there, that whole valley got pretty much overran by the wolves, and you don't see very many. Well, you do see bear sightings up there so often because bears are opportunistic animals. They will try to chase wolves off of a carcass, but that would be the premier spot for wolf sightings and wolf howling and the whole 9 yards, which that would be the next place I go if I go back up there by myself. Well, I might take Jerry Ann if we have an RV or we can afford to. Then there's Mammoth Hot Springs, and they have their hotel and cabins. Then you have Old Faithful, and they have hotels and cabins. Then you have Lake, which has cabins and campgrounds. Bridge, which has a small hotel and campgrounds. Those are the ones I can remember off the top of my head that have hotels and campgrounds, places to stay within the park. Outside the park, you have the West Gate, which is West Yellowstone, which is a small tourist town. During the wintertime, that town is a ghost town because it is in the valley, and there's hardly any traffic because they are surrounded by mountains and valleys, and most people don't travel that back road from Bozeman to Yellowstone because of the potential problems with the avalanche and the snow. They have a hard time plowing that area because it's just too much snow. Then there's the North Gate, which is Gardner, which is open year round. It's a small tourist town, but it's a small town. It's their business relies on tourism, the park itself, because a lot of the people who work in the park, especially near the North Gate, they live in Gardner. But Gardner is a small little community. They have hotels, bed and breakfasts, souvenir shops, ice cream shops, eateries, a couple bars. one of the oldest bars that was up there that used to serve a lot of the Yellowstone people who went out of Yellowstone to go to an actual bar, not just an employee bar. It burnt down. It was a sad day. A lot of fond memories. But then there's Cody, Wyoming, which is considered the East Gate. Cody, Wyoming is a small... Is that Wyoming? Or no, Cody? Yeah, Cody is part of Wyoming. Only a small sector. I'll explain Yellowstone map in a second. Cody, Wyoming is a small tourist town. I don't know what it looks like. I've never been to it. I just know stories about Cody. It's also one of the many different stops for Pony Express and stagecoaches and things like that. Then you have the largest of the four towns at the four gates, and that is Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Jackson Hole, Wyoming is not only the south gate of Yellowstone National Park, but it is a major year-round tourist attraction because they have ski lodges. They have different lodges and hotels and whatnot that are open year-round for skiing, tourism into Yellowstone. There's been a couple of different movies shot around the Jackson Hole, Wyoming area. Never went to Jackson Hole. I've seen a lot of pretty pictures of what it looks like during the wintertime and things like that. But for the most part, Jackson Hole serves as the South Gate. Now, Jackson Hole, Wyoming and Gardner, Montana stay open year-round because there is a route that goes through Yellowstone that a lot of traffic goes through because it's kind of like the easiest way to go north and south through Yellowstone and not have to deal with going around and take an extra 2 hours or 3 hours to get around Yellowstone. Because like I said in one of my other videos, Yellowstone is 3.3 million acres worth of pristine, protected wildlife and wild forestry, and it's just the biggest and the first, literally the first worldwide national park, thanks to Teddy Roosevelt. Now, here's a little bit brief history. Teddy Roosevelt originally went to what became Yellowstone National Park because he had sent out a surveyor, a friend of his, to go find Teddy a big piece of land that is pristine, has not been touched by man, just hasn't been, overran or built up or anything like that by man, to go for a place for him to go hunting and bring his friends. Yellowstone National Park was originally established, well, before it became a national park, it was originally established first and foremost as a cavalry fortification for the West, for that part of the West, because it was unsettled and unstable by Anglo people. It was basically, I can't remember the name of the different tribes, but there was 3 different tribes that lived in that area, and 2 of them were more interested in fighting change, which I don't blame them, because you're coming into my land, you're trying to take it over and kick me out, and no. There was one particular tribe that befriended the white man because white man had some good stuff to trade for. That and a factor, when you go to a new territory, you need somebody who's from that territory to tell them all the ins and outs and dangers and all that fun stuff. What was that tribe name? Paiute? I think they were called the Paiute. I don't know. There's like 3 different tribes. One of them was the Paiute. The other 2 had names that I cannot pronounce, let alone remember the pronunciation. But his friend went out there with the cavalry, of course, because, they have to have protection duty. Protection from hostile forces or hostile whatevers. And the gentleman, I can't remember his name, sent Teddy a telegram saying, hey, I have found the most beautiful, most elegant. Lots of different wildlife, lots of untouched land, lots of dangers and beauty and all kinds of fun stuff. And Teddy took his entourage out there, and that's where he got his nickname, Teddy Roosevelt, by the way. Because we all know Teddy Roosevelt's real name is Theodore. And that's what everybody called him. Either they called him Mr. President or Mr. Roosevelt. From stories I heard, nobody really called him Theodore. But what gave him his name is, according to stories, and even there's a couple paintings, one day while they were out sitting at the campsite, taking in the sights, deciding what they were going to do for the day. Yes, Mr. Roosevelt wanted to go hunt big game. Well, Yellowstone National Park at the time had big game. Big bears, bison, elk, moose, big game for somebody like Teddy Roosevelt. Well, the story goes is one day while they were eating lunch, a bear cub, literally walked straight up to Teddy Roosevelt and basically begged for food. And because of, I guess, the interaction between Teddy Roosevelt and this bear cub, Mom might have been one of the targets that Teddy shot, because of this bear cub and the factor that a lot of really good close friends of Teddy Roosevelt knew how much of he might have been a big, burly, loud guy, but he was a soft teddy bear when it came to certain situations. Well, that little bear cub kind of caused everybody to start causing President Roosevelt Teddy Roosevelt. So, little brief history that I know about. I have one last question, and this is not from Nellie. This is actually from Jackie Well. Hopefully I'm saying that last name right. This morning she put in a question that said, if the circumstances were different, would I have become a park ranger? Well, Jackie, I will have to basically, yes. A big, loud, resounding yes. If I had the educational background, and there are 3 ways to have your educational background for the forestry department or forest ranger department. You have to be ex-military. I don't think my military background would be good enough, and I'm too old for it. Ex-police force. Doesn't matter if it was military police or just your everyday street cop. You need an education in either forestry. You need to have at least a bachelor's degree in either forestry or some other realm of education that would fit into the ranger aspect. I looked it up way back when, after my first time in Yellowstone. I looked it up, and basically they said to be not Yellowstone itself, but to be a forest ranger, you have to have a degree, a bachelor's degree or higher in law enforcement, forestry, and I forgot what the third thing was, but you have to have a degree that matches these basic educational backgrounds. And I went, darn it, I don't have the money for the education, and I know me in education, unless it was really extremely interesting, I wouldn't have had a problem until the testing came along. And unfortunately, in college, 90% of your grade score is depending on your test scores. And I have test anxiety, so I know I felt that I would have had a major problem. This was also after spending a year at Ozark Christian College, And because of my test anxiety in that particular college, I was afraid that things wouldn't work out. But yeah, if the circumstances were different and I had the educational background or the background to fill out an application for a park ranger, yes, I would have. Um, the downside is not every park ranger gets to go straight to Yellowstone National Park. In fact, a couple of the park rangers that I knew back in Yellowstone told me that they originally started in the forestry department in a just like you're patrolling the forest, making sure people aren't poaching or hunting without a license, things like that. You don't get to choose your location. You have to literally either work your way into it, or one particular park ranger I talked to, who was there going on 5 years and was thankful that he never got pushed out of the park. He had to spend his first 4.5 years as a park ranger in hold on, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember the story he told me. Well, I know one of them was a park ranger for a short period of time before they got their spot in Yellowstone at Mount Rushmore. I think another one told me that they were a park ranger for a short period of time in like the Smoky Mountains or someplace like that out here, out in the Midwest, out in this region. So you don't always get to go directly into Yellowstone. You have to work outside of Yellowstone and continuously apply to go to Yellowstone until you get a spot open for you. And a lot of times the spots don't get open up until either somebody retires or somebody decides that they want to work someplace else. But for the most part, most of the park rangers that I knew in Yellowstone, they had to work someplace outside of Yellowstone as a park ranger. And it's not just the thing about being able to work in Yellowstone. It's like for a lot of people, it's a covenant spot, because it's like I get to be in the middle of the most beautiful land you possibly can, roaming around the land in a vehicle or on horseback or whatever, making sure people aren't poaching or doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing in the park. That in factor, if you're like some park rangers, they have a certain amount of background dealing with the general public. So a lot of those particular park rangers are not just park rangers, they're tour guides. Basically, they'll take a group of people and they'll walk around like the Geyser Basin, talking about the thermodynamics of the basin and the geysers and the mud pots and the fumaroles. And by the way, the fumaroles are the steamers. They're the openings in the ground that just hiss and make noise and steam away. There's a couple of colorful names for some of those fumaroles. One of them is the Devil's Whistle, because you don't see steam coming out, you don't see smoke coming out. All you hear is this eerie whistling sound that literally sounds like some sort of demonic growling dog. That's the best way I can describe it. It is eerie, it's freaky, it's interesting to know about, but it's just like, I don't know what's in that hole, but I don't want to find out. But yeah, I mean, between some of the stories I've heard from park rangers and some of the things I've talked about with park rangers, not only in Yellowstone but in some of the other places I've been. I mean, when I was a teenager, before I even knew the full dynamics of Yellowstone, living in Phoenix, Arizona, I used to love going to the zoo. 4 different reasons I love going to the zoo in Phoenix. One, I knew 2 people who worked behind the scenes there at Phoenix. They were friends of family members, or as I like to say, friends of friends. That and a factor, every time I went was either with a group, and let's just say for a teenager to know more than the actual educator in the zoo is something that I used to boast about, but I was like, you know what? maybe it's the fact of that a lot of times these tour guides talk about the same thing over and over and over again, and they just get tired of saying it, and they want to just this is the that. And then the third reason was there was a beautiful, beautiful big black panther. And I don't know if they had a plaque or not, because a lot of times they don't always put plaques up saying raised in captivity or something like that. But this Black Panther had to be raised in captivity because he paced in front of the enclosure, and the only thing keeping people from actually touching this animal, besides the very thin wiring on the front of the enclosure, was a I don't even know how far the distance was between the railing and the actual enclosure, but I used to be able to reach out and literally stroke his side as you passed by, and she, I don't remember what sex it was, but this big cat had no problems with my teenage hands stroking his side or things like that. I never tried to put my fingers in the cage because God only knows, but this big guy was not aggressive. He was a very calm, cool, collective putty tat. And then the other reason why was Pink Zoo had a section that you can go into and walk around inside of it, and it was various different enclosures with a variety of different type of birds. Burrowing owls, killdeer, cranes in one form or another, just various types of birds. Most of them, none of them really small, because they would have been able to get out of their enclosure real easily, because again, the only thing keeping the animal from escaping the enclosure was thin wire bars in front of the opening. And I remember one day going into that enclosure, I went to my favorite spot, which was by the burrowing owls. These little owls are cute as can be, and they pop up and down out of their little burrow. Well, right next to them was a I cannot remember what kind of shorebird it was, but it was a shorebird. I don't know if it was a killdeer or whatever it was. Moved very fast on the ground, like ran real quick, and was not a roadrunner. Roadrunner, no way I'd be able to catch it. But one day I was in there, and one of the zookeepers was in the enclosure, like cleaning it up, getting rid of any bird debris, basically. Bird poo, feathers, leftover food or whatever they fed the bird. But as she was sweeping, I happened to step. I got to that point and just said, "Hi, how you doing?" Being friendly. And this particular little bird, as she was trying to clean it up, decided to become an escape artist and literally got out of the enclosure. And it ran right past me. I was like, "What the?" And I guess looked like it was trying to head towards the door, like it knew where the door was. Like it's done this multiple times, which is kind of like, why don't you have better screens to keep the bird from escaping? But it ran towards the door, and I guess about the same time it was getting close to the door, people were coming in, and it turned around and ran. It looked like it was going to try to run in a different direction, but it literally like ran towards me, and just as it was getting close to me, it looked like it was going to veer off to not go into its enclosure. I don't know if that was because of the fact that I was standing there or not, but I literally lunged out and grabbed the bird by its midsection. Well, I actually grabbed it by the leg and pulled it towards me. And I guess the person who got mad at me was part of the management system for that particular that building, aviary or whatever they want to call it, got mad at me, and I said, hey, look, bird's not injured. You can easily take it and examine it. It got out. I'm an animal lover. I did the best I could to keep it from getting hurt. I wanted a job at the zoo anyhow as a zookeeper, because they had trying to think of the species, the Mexican wolves, which are a subcategory of gray wolf. They had an enclosure with Mexican wolves, and every time I go to see them, they seem to be a little lethargic for wolves. But Arizona, they're out in the open. There's no real shading for them except for in their little, they have this little, I'm just going to call it a hut, screen, like a lean-to type deal, for them to hide under. And that's where they, no matter what time of year I went, that's where they seem to be hanging out. No real activity, no real, like, they didn't act like your typical, well, at the time, as being a teenager, just watching wolves on TV and whatnot. It's like, these guys aren't very active for wolves. Of course, most documentaries and most movies usually use either gray wolves, or there was a story about them using a particular breed or particular group of huskies that were trained and they look like wolves. And I'm like, okay, I don't believe that, but okay. Anyhow, but yeah, I would have loved to either, when I was growing up, when I was younger, before I hit my teens, before my father passed away, I was all about the military. I was, oh yeah, I'm going to be an Air Force pilot. I'm going to do this in the Air Force. I'm going to follow my father's footsteps and, go in the military, blah, blah, blah. That kind of fell through. Not because of, Dad retired from the military, but that fell through because, like, I sat in the cockpits of various aircraft, and I went, wow. All these, I don't understand how a pilot can fly this thing with all these different instrument panels. I knew the stick was for the controlling of the direction of the plane, and I knew the throttle was for the different speeds. But you've got your fuel gauge, your weapon gauge, your compass, your guidance system, all these different pieces of equipment that you have to be mindful of. And I'm like, yeah, this was not exactly what I thought it was going to be like as a kid. But and not that I ever flew anything, but it's just like, as I got older, especially when Dad was working for Hughes Helicopters, or AKA McDonnell Douglas, sitting in the cockpit, even in the front seat of an Apache. And the front seat of the Apache is more complicated than the back seat, because the back seat is basically for the pilot. The pilot has some control over weaponry if something happens to the gunner up front, but his main job is to fly the aircraft. While the gunner has not only your stick and your yaw, which is the item that makes a helicopter go up and down and forward, but the gunner has the weapons console in front of him, which looks like a screen you put your face into, or the optical unit that goes over your one eye. He's got the weapons control, the flight control. He's got all the controls. So if something happens to the pilot, the gunner can still operate the helicopter and get himself to safety. But the instrument panel on the newer aircrafts that I've seen were like even more complicated than the F-16s and F-15s I remember growing up around. And I was like, no. I think my feet are supposed to be firmly planted on the ground, not underwater, not above, up in the sky. That's why I went to the Army. I'm a good swimmer, but the idea of having to be out in the middle of the ocean, you can either drown or get eaten by sharks. No, thank you. Falling out of the sky at 6, 7, 800 feet above above the ground. No, thank you. Parachute or not. And I'm not psychotic like most. Well, I'm just making fun of the Marines, but they're crazier than the Army people. That's why I tried to go in the Army. But no, I had a lot of dreams as a kid. I mean, between first I wanted to be in the military, be an Air Force pilot, and that hearing different stories about what could happen made me go, no, thank you. And then even before I joined the military or attempted to go into the military, I had dreams of working with animals. I mean, I knew growing up I loved animals. I mean, even as a young kid, it's like I had a love for all things furry. I love my birds. I love most animals. There are some animals like no thank you no. Spiders, they're intriguing because they're 8-legged and they can make these webs and whatnot. But when you're in Arizona, especially in Arizona, and you like see this little spider and think, oh, he's harmless or whatnot, and most of the time, unless they were black, they were harmless. But when you go to try to pick it up to get it out of your house or whatnot and not harm it, and the thing starts jumping at you, that's when you kind of go, what the? Because we had in Arizona these wolf jumping spiders, and that's what they were called, wolf jumping spiders. They're small little guys. Well, that's probably about the biggest I've ever seen one, with its legs spread out. Ow, I'm sorry. I just bit my cheek again. They have a tendency to, they go into what they call a defensive. Their legs normally spread out. But when they go into a defensive, they curl up like this. And when something gets close to it, it literally springs. I mean, literally jumps. And I'm like, you're cute, but you're freaky. What else did we have in Arizona that I wasn't keen? Well, scorpions. Seen plenty of those, and I knew what they could do. And no. The critters out in Arizona that I had to deal with that I did not like dealing with, black widows, scorpions. Luckily, I never really had to deal with them, but I've heard them and seen them in distance, and that was our diamondback rattlesnakes. But we had some funny little animals out there in Arizona besides the roadrunner. I've seen a couple of roadrunners when we lived in Mesa. I'd be riding my bike to school or to my friend's house, and all of a sudden this bird, single bird, a big old long tail, literally run right across the my path, and I'm like, what the? Roadrunner. And then we had out in Mesa, we had the quail. I ran across a covey, and they're called covey, and it's just like a small flock of quail. I think there was like 12 of them in that particular group that I saw. But out in Mesa, as well as Paradise Valley, because both places were still being built up, we dealt with like scorpions, black widows, mostly. Most of the rattlesnakes would hear the noise or feel the vibrations in the ground and try their best to get the heck out of Dodge. But we also had like we had groundhog out. Well, not groundhog, prairie dogs. We had prairie dogs out there. We had hawks of 3 different varieties of hawks. We had the Harris hawk, the red tail, and the red shin hawk. Of course, I had to deal with the neighbors yapping Chihuahua. That was fun. Trying to get the mail, because the mailboxes in Arizona was usually the neighborhood. Each block had a box, and you had to go down to your box, stick a key into your address locker, open it up, and pull your mail out. Well, between my house and the mailbox in Mesa, which is a suburb of Phoenix, there's this little Chihuahua. Yappy. That's what I used to call him, Yappy. I used to call him Yappy. I don't know who owned him. I just know he. Anytime you go to past the house that he was, I guess, the owner lived in, this little thing would come running out of nowhere, nipping at your heels, yapping the whole 9 yards, and preteen, early teen angst. I wanted to turn around and use him like a football, but no, I just yell at him. I actually found a way to I found a way to deal with him, and that was basically you turn around real quick and you stomp your foot and yell at the same time, and this thing went back to its home. It became a game, and then I decided one day I was going to try to do something a little different, see what would happen. Dog treat. I had gone down with some of my earned money to one of our local gas stations that had like a bag of dog treats, things like jerky or some sort of dog jerky. Well, he stopped yapping at me, but the owner wasn't exactly happy with me. And of course, was this before or after Dad passed away? Because he passed away in Mesa. I don't remember. But I have a way with, I have a way with animals. Let's just put it that way. And I learned at a very young age that who coined it? Somebody coined something about my skills and my abilities with animals. Oh yeah, it was one of my grandparents' neighbors, who not only did he tell my parents that I would be a public speaker, which I guess I am now, but at the time I was like, me? Public speak? Well, no. It was my teens when I remembered that conversation, because we were talking about stories after my grandmother passed away, about things that happened when I was younger. And I think it was my mom who said something, who told me about that, and I went, me? Public speaker. I hate people. I am not a people person. I don't like society. I still don't like society. I like people, I just don't like society. But now that I'm thinking about it, I look back at it and go, I told myself I'd never be a public speaker because I don't like the strain of being in the spotlight. And yet here I am on YouTube speaking to people. It may not be a big public forum like on a stage or something like that, but still I'm doing it. But I think it was the same person who also told my family that I would have a way with animals or have something to do with animals. And I tried that once. I tried going for veterinarian education, but is that my diploma down there? I just saw something that caught my eye, so give me a second. Squirrel. Yeah. What is this? Yes, that is my forever tree. Some of Jerry Ann's Harry Potter stuff. I had somebody make a comment about my house being an episode of Hoarders, and I'm like, no, it's not. I've seen worse. Oh, yes. Okay. I do have, I'm surprised, a diploma from Nassau County, which is New York, for veterinarian assistant. I forgot I still had that. I got that diploma, 120 hours worth of education, which is an associate's degree or a degree for veterinarian assisting, which I tried. Problem is, what happened with that kind of fell through, so I'm not gonna worry about it. But anyhow, thank you for listening to this video. A little bit of Q&A about Yellowstone. A couple questions. If I get any more questions or anything like that, excuse the noise, I will, address them. I like doing this. I like doing the Q&A thing because you guys are asking specific questions about specific things on a video. And I love answering those questions because the fact that you wanted to know a little bit more about my time in Yellowstone and my background and whatnot in Yellowstone. Granted, I did go into different areas that kind of connected, but I'm going to go ahead and get off this because I thought I just heard a noise and I don't know what it was, and I want to go and check it out and hopefully not get yelled at for not responding right away. But anyhow, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them in the question or comment box, and I will deal with them. I've had, I don't even remember the person's name, but I know they weren't part of the YouTube administrative groups, but I had to basically block and remove this person because the comments were inappropriate and they were not part of the YouTube management system. So I do look at my comments and I do deal with them as I feel necessary. Thankfully, I haven't had to really do that. I haven't had to block or remove or anything like that in quite some time, thankfully. But there's always some troll out there wanting to stir trouble. What he was doing, he didn't do just on the Yellowstone videos. He did it on several different other videos that, no, the way YouTube does stuff, he was not part of, I know. But anyhow, I do listen to your comments. Obviously, I got your questions and answered those. So I do like your comments. If you're new to my channel and you want to join, that is your choice. You can click on the button that says subscribe, and then a little button that looks like a bell will pop up, and you can click on that. Once you do that, not only do you become a member of my channel, but you get notified by YouTube when I put in new videos. So until next time, I notice this weird gray hair right here. Until next time, God bless. Have a good day. Be safe. Bye.